Have some breaking news to bring you now. Constance Marten and her partner Mark Gordon have both been found guilty over the death of their newborn baby. They have both been found guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence. That's Constance Marten and Mark Gordon on your screens right now have both been found guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence. You will recall the pair went missing last January 2023, in fact. They were a mother and father. There was a police appeal for their whereabouts because they were concerned that they were missing with their newborn baby. It was understood that at the time Constance Marten had very recently been given birth, and a massive hunt was on. There was concern for the newborn baby and, of course, the parents' welfare at the time. It was later that the baby's body was found wrapped in a carrier bag in an allotment. Constance Marten and Mark Gordon found guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence. Our correspondent Ashna Harinag has this report.
The tiny frame of newborn baby Victoria, fragile and failed by her parents. Constance Marten and Mark Gordon risked her life to keep her all to themselves. This is one of the last times she'd be seen alive. This was the moment the manhunt for them began, after their car caught fire on a motorway in Bolton in January 2023. Gordon was talking to Mr. Hudson, who filmed this video.
The nearest rest stop.
He and his son had pulled over and tried to help, but it became clear the couple wanted to be left alone.
She sort of says, do you want to get on your way? And I said, no, well, we can wait a bit if you want. No, you'd be fine. We'll be fine now. So just as I'm walking back to my van, I put my hand on top of the baby's head. And I just said, God bless. And then got back into our van and drove off. Now, if I hadn't have touched the baby's head, maybe I wouldn't have felt the way I felt.
It's thought Mr. Hudson is the only person aside from the couple to have interacted with the baby.
It did lie heavy on me. I didn't like my thoughts at that time because I was still thinking, what if? What if the police had come? What if I'd have stayed?
The car had been packed full of clothing, food, notebooks and the placenta from the birth. What followed is the couple spending more than 50 days on the run, often using the cover of darkness to travel hundreds of miles across the country, living undetected, all with their newborn. They spent hundreds of pounds on taxis, travelling from Bolton to London to Essex and the south coast, before choosing to live off-grid in sub-zero temperatures. They ditched a buggy hours after buying it, and according to the prosecution, carried Victoria in a supermarket shopping bag instead. It was in this same bag that her body would later be found. For weeks, Miss Marten carried her around in her coat, hiding her from prying eyes. Their decisions, the jury were told, were selfish. They had been previously warned about the dangers of living in a tent with a newborn, but families say they had little choice and had to keep moving. This is Karen Satchell, Gordon's sister. She believes the spotlight on them was too harsh.
I think they were traumatised as a couple and didn't know what to do and deal with it. And it's very, very heart-clenching to find that. Can you imagine how you would feel? Nobody can actually imagine that unless they've actually lived it, and the trauma now that you're under surveillance and underneath all this scrutiny, and then the baby dies. It's like, wow, oh my God, what are we going to do now?
She says her younger brother had always been private about his family life. Karen had never met Marten.
I know he called me once and said he was with his girl and he's had another baby, so I was like, where is she? Bring her, let me see her, you know. But he says, yeah, one day I'll come by, but he never actually did show up. And when he does, he shows up by himself.
She found out the couple were missing at the same time as everyone else.
It came on the news and I saw the pictures of them. And we all kind of freaked out, like, call Mom. But we never would have found anything of the sort. I don't know what went wrong.
It was for the jury to decide whether Gordon knew right from wrong. The retrial heard extraordinary revelations about his past offences as a teenager in the United States.
He did get 40 years imprisonment even as a 14-year-old and was released after 22 years. He went into a neighbour's address and he was armed and he attempted to rape her. And then on another occasion he went into another property armed, but there was a male occupant this time.
That man was Patrick Nash.
I had my yard tools out on the back porch. He came in with a shovel and he attacked me with a shovel.
Speaking from his home in Florida, he recalled the night an armed Gordon broke in.
But my wife always had premonitions of somebody standing at the end of our bed, and she would wake up screaming, and I'd have to calm her down. But this particular morning, she woke up and there was somebody there. So as I was getting out of bed, I was attacked. I had to go have stitches in my scalp. I think I got like between 12 and 17 stitches or staples. We were both upset, you know. It was very frightful. We didn't sleep well for quite some time.
Gordon met Marten in 2014. Victoria was the couple's 5th child. The other 4 are all now in care.
Right, where's your child?
When they were eventually arrested at the end of February 2023, both repeatedly refused to answer questions about the baby's whereabouts.
You're under arrest for child neglect.
Where is your child?
With Gordon more focused on trying to eat food he'd just bought.
Put the stuff down. We're going to put you in cuffs. Then we will talk about you eating.
Let me have my food.
2 days later, baby Victoria's body was found in a shopping bag inside this shed, covered with rubbish and dirt. A jury has now found that her parents' actions led to her entirely avoidable death at just a few weeks old. Ashna Harinag, Sky News.
And we are bringing you that breaking news on the retrial of Constance Marten and Mark Gordon, who have been found guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence of their small baby named Victoria. So Constance Marten and Mark Gordon found guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence. We are now getting some information as well of what happened in court today. It's understood that there was no response from either of the defendants when this verdict came through. They refused to stand up. It says that Mark Gordon was leaning his head back with his eyes closed, and Constance Marten has a look of resignation. The judge, meanwhile, has thanked the jury and said that since they have spent so much time on this trial, they can be excused from all future jury service. So a reminder of our breaking news here on Sky News that Constance Marten and Mark Gordon have both been found guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence following the death of their daughter, baby Victoria. She died just a few weeks old, as we just saw in that report. Her body was found in a shopping bag shortly after both of them went missing, and a massive police appeal at the time in January 2023 led to eventually the discovery of Victoria's body. So during the retrial, the jury heard details of the couple's journey across the country and how they were eventually caught. Well, this report from data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire contains distressing details of child neglect.
Multiple sightings, a £10,000 reward for information, and a massive police hunt. And still, Constance Marten and Mark Gordon managed to travel hundreds of miles from the north of the country to the south. This is how they evaded the authorities. Constance Marten was reported missing on the 5th of January. That same evening, the car she'd been travelling in with partner Mark Gordon caught fire on the M61 near Bolton. Van driver Ken Hudson had been behind them on the motorway. He pulled over to help them and called the emergency services. The couple left on foot, heading towards Bolton. They left behind a placenta wrapped in a towel and Martin's passport, along with a bag of more than 30 mobile phones, used nappies, a cat in a pet carrier and a Bible. A local resident gave them a lift into Bolton, where they were seen at the Bolton Interchange bus station, before deciding to take a taxi 35 miles to Liverpool, paying £80. From there, they flagged down another taxi, which took them 270 miles across the country to Harwich in Essex. Driver Ali Yaria said the woman was shivering and he saw a baby inside the woman's jacket wearing only a nappy. In Harwich, they checked into a Premier Inn using a false name, Thomas. Hotel staff said Martin paid in cash and seemed, quote, quite distressed. After being asked to leave in the morning because they couldn't provide proof of identity, they moved to the Friat Hotel for the night. They checked out early the next morning. Martin was seen outside Harwich Port 2 hours later. A member of the public confronted the couple, having seen a news report about their disappearance. Dale Gosling said that a baby was wrapped inside Martin's coat and that he heard crying. The couple then took a taxi from Harwich to Colchester. Then, later that morning, another taxi from Colchester to East Ham in East London. CCTV showed the couple getting out of the cab with their baby girl Victoria, Martin cradling the child under her jacket. Later that day, Gordon bought a buggy in Argos before meeting Martin in a kebab shop. She assembled the buggy and then put the baby in. They then took a series of taxis around London, abandoning the buggy and, prosecutors said, transferring the baby to a Lidl shopping bag instead. From North London, they headed to the port town of New Haven, arriving at 5 in the morning. A CCTV camera at a petrol station shows them wandering around in the early hours, before heading towards the South Downs on foot. They weren't seen again until 4 days later. Martin was back at the garage, buying sweets, snacks and petrol. They claimed the baby had already died by this point. The next sighting was on the outskirts of Brighton. Gordon was spotted emerging from a tent in the woods in Stanmer Park. 2 weeks later, the Met Police offered a £10,000 reward for information. But it was more than a fortnight before witnesses reported further sightings. One near Hollingbury Golf Course in Brighton. Another in the Coldine Lane area of the city. And back in Stanmer Park a day later. Witness Pauline Mason told the court she saw a mother with a baby who she believed was dead. On the 20th of February, the pair were captured on CCTV, trying and failing to break into Hollingbury Golf Course and rummaging through the bins. A week later, they were back in the same area. This time, though, they would not go unnoticed. Their run was about to come to an end. They were spotted in a local shop, buying food and withdrawing cash. A member of the public who recognised them from media reporting called the police. And a few minutes later, the couple were arrested in nearby Stanmer Villas.
You're under arrest for child neglect.
Where is your child?
They were repeatedly asked where the child was.
Where's the child?
I want food.
Is the child alive?
That day, the police launched a large-scale search for the baby. More than 200 officers covered an area of 7 miles by 13 miles to look for the baby, from where the couple were sighted to where they were arrested. Over the next few days, an area of 90 square miles was scoured, using dogs, drones, thermal cameras and a helicopter. On March the 1st, police found baby Victoria's body in a disused shed near the allotments. This is the moment when baby Victoria's remains are found inside a Lidl shopping bag. There may have been little hope at that stage of finding the child alive. But this was an ending more disturbing than anyone had thought. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
Well, Ken Hudson pulled over after the couple's car caught fire near Bolton. He told Sky's Ashna Harinag the couple wanted him to leave rather than help them.
She's just stood there, and then I realised it's a baby. And I just said, oh, how's the baby? How's the baby? And she said, she's fine. And I said, oh, right, okay. And then the next thing that they want to do is for us to go. I can see the top of the baby's head. It looked as though it was wrapped up. She's with somebody else, although they didn't seem to speak. She's with somebody else. It's getting late. So I said to Jack, shall we go? And Jack says, yeah. So just as I'm walking back to my van, I put my hand on top of the baby's head. And I just said, God bless. And then got back into our van and drove off. Now, if I hadn't have touched the baby's head, maybe I wouldn't have felt the way I felt. I said to my wife, I said, if I'd have waited for the emergency services and they'd have arrived, maybe the police would have come, maybe the ambulance would have come, maybe the fire brigade would have come, but somebody would have been there to stop them doing what they eventually did, which was leave the scene. And if that had happened, then I thought to myself that the baby may have survived.
Well, that was one of the witnesses as we bring you that breaking news that Constance Marten and Mark Gordon have both been found guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence following the death of their daughter, baby Victoria. A reminder that this was a retrial. It was at a previous trial they were already found guilty of concealing Victoria's birth and perverting the course of justice by not reporting her death. But the jury couldn't come to a verdict on these outstanding charges, and now in this retrial they have both been found guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence.